All right, today we're going to travel back in time. We're heading to the rugged, forested hills of Kysuce as it was in the 19th century. And we're not just looking at old maps, we're going to see this place through a vivid first-hand account from the era. So, let's jump right in.
This one line from our source, it just says it all, doesn't it? This is a story about survival, plain and simple, about people carving out a life for themselves with nothing but high pastures and deep woods. It really speaks to how incredibly resilient people can be when faced with a tough environment.
So, who's taking us on this journey? Well, meet our guide, Alojz Július Lovčáni. His super detailed observations are basically our time machine into this lost world.
And look, this guy wasn't some distant academic writing from an office. No way. He was a teacher in nearby Žilina, so he had a real ground-level view of things. You can feel in his writing that he had this deep connection to the mountains and the people there, and it just makes his work come alive.
This timeline really helps put it all into perspective. You see, Lovčáni got to know this area inside and out while he was teaching in Žilia back in the 1870s. The description we're diving into comes from his work on this massive imperial project later on. So we're really getting a snapshot of Kysuce through his eyes during a very specific and very transformative period.
Okay, so we've met our guide. Now, let's talk about the land itself. Because the geography of Kysuce, these formidable mountains, well, they shaped every single part of daily life.
And we're talking about some serious peaks. Javorníky, Veľký Polom, Bednaroa. These weren't just pretty scenery, they were the border. They were basically the northern wall of Trenčín County, a natural barrier separating different regions within the huge Austro-Hungarian Empire.
This gives you a great idea of what it looked like. Lovčáni describes these steep cone-shaped hills, but they weren't rocky and barren. Nope. They were covered in lush green vegetation. Just try to picture these vast, ancient-feeling forests of pine and spruce. It must have been both absolutely beautiful and kind of intimidating at the same time.
So with a landscape that intense, how did people actually live there? This is where the story of human adaptation really gets good.
Well, for one thing, they didn't all cluster together in big villages down in the valleys. Instead, families would hike way up the hillsides, clear a small patch of forest, and build a little group of houses. So you ended up with these isolated hamlets scattered all across the mountains, wherever they could find a bit of usable land.
Now, get ready for this, because this number is staggering. The village of Turzovka, with all its little scattered hamlets, had over 12,000 residents. That actually made it the largest municipality in the whole county. But that massive population came with a huge cost.
And here's the harsh reality behind that big number. A full 1/3 of those 12,000 people had to leave home every single year just to find work. The land, as beautiful as it was, simply couldn't support them all. They had to become seasonal migrants, heading to the lowlands and beyond just to survive.
This comparison really paints a picture of two completely different worlds. On one hand, you have Turzovka. It was founded by woodcutters, struggled with extreme poverty, and saw huge numbers of its people leave every year. On the other hand, there's Chadka. It was founded by an administrator and became a stable regional hub, a center for trade. Two towns, not that far apart, with completely different destinies.
All right, now for what might be the most dramatic part of Lovčáni's whole account, the incredible and incredibly dangerous work of the river rafters. These people literally use the forces of nature to get their products to market.
And the Bystrica River is the perfect example of the extremes in this region. Most of the year, it was just a dry bed of stones, but when the rains came, it transformed into a raging torrent. And that dangerous, raging torrent, well, that was their highway to the outside world.
The way Lovčáni describes this is just amazing. Picture it. Rafters are just standing around, waiting by their rafts in the dry riverbed. A storm cloud is their starting gun. The second the river swells, it's a 2-hour frenzy of pure chaos. They have to launch into this violent, temporary flood and ride it downstream. It was a massive gamble against time and nature itself.
But that dangerous dance with the floodwaters, its days were numbered. A new technology was on its way, and it promised a much more reliable connection to the rest of the world.
That new technology was the Košice-Bohumín Railway. It was a total game changer. It cut right through the Kysuce Valley, went through the trade town of Chadka, and on into Silesia. Another line connected the region to Galicia. All of a sudden, there was a way out that didn't depend on a life-or-death gamble with a rainstorm.
This iron horse really connected all the dots we've been talking about.
It offered a stable path for all those migrant workers and a brand new artery for trade. This was the beginning of the end for the isolated Kysuce that Lovčáni described so vividly. So, this all leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've seen a world defined by hardship, but also by incredible resilience and ingenuity, all on the brink of huge change. It makes you wonder, right? How does a landscape that's so beautiful but also so unforgiving end up shaping the spirit of a people for generations to come?